Gavin, how are you?
Good, thanks, Rob. How are you?
Not bad. I'm in the office. I was going to say this is the first time I've done the podcast in the office, but with the lockdown rules, yesterday might be the last one in quite a while.
Could well be, unfortunately.
I even get the hoodie. Got the hoodie. Never know.
There we go.
I was all suited and booted today as well.
Branded up.
Even get the bottles. A lot.
Oh.
So today we've not done a podcast for a few weeks, but I thought today we'd do one on something we get asked about quite a lot since we launched Recruitment Process Intelligence. Is what do we actually mean by data and intelligence in the recruitment process? So I'm a marketer. For years, I've looked at data intelligence, whether it's things on Google Analytics, Facebook Insights, you name it. And I get the power of analytics and insights throughout the process, whether it's an awareness stage, a consideration stage, or a close stage. So I kind of get how the power of data and intelligence. But from a recruitment point of view, what does that mean to you? What does data intelligence mean to you?
So, I think it's, for me, it's about providing information that is useful to the candidate or client. I think we don't fall into the trap of just saying, here's insights just for the sake of it. It's about providing information that, prompts a decision, an action, or gives insights that allows a client or candidate to make a better decision. I think from my point of view, there's probably three areas or three times that we use insights and intelligence most. I would say before the recruitment process starts, during the process, and then at the end of the process. And if I talk about before the recruitment process starts, I think, as we've launched RPI, clearly one of the key elements is intelligence, as it's in the name. And over the last month, we're starting to really evolve our offering to tie in as much as possible to that RPI category that we've created. And I think intelligence, especially in today's world, is important because people are, taking hiring more seriously. They're looking and saying, in the current climate, every hire is really important to get the right hire. Therefore, that insights becomes, more important. I think before the process starts, if we look at ourselves, when we are working on an assignment or a project with a client, one of the key phases that we look at is scoping. And within that scoping now, we've developed tools that allows us really to dig in a bit further, to some insights. So for example, let's say we're looking at a particular, role in the US, for example, we can now, show our clients things like the location of that talent pool, what the companies that talent pool are working, in at the moment, what titles are other organizations calling that particular role, past companies, skills, experience, etc. We can look at the diversity of the talent pool. And for example, if let's say we see that the diversity of the pool isn't what the client is looking for, we can then have that discussion up front and say, okay, rather than looking for X amount of years experience, if you drop that slightly, the talent pool becomes, more diverse. So really what we're trying to do at that front end of the process now is give our clients insights to allow them to start to assess what they're really looking for. In particular with diversity being, rightly so a hot topic right now, it's not good enough to give that insights at the end of the process. For us, it's about bringing that up front to really bring that kind of scoping, session to life with the client. So that's really almost before the process starts. We're actually going into quite a bit of detail now saying, here's what you need to know about the kind of, I guess the term, the total addressable market. You could say the talent addressable market. So here is information about, the addressable market for the particular hire. I think then during the process, so if we talk about insights that we're giving, clients during the process, so we're looking at things like benchmarking. So, what are other organizations paying for this role, both in terms of salary, bonus, benefits, etc. We're giving clients competitive insights saying, we have heard that this organization is doing this, relative to this particular role. And we're also, one of our key parts of our process is the 6 Fs. So looking at the factors that are important to candidates. And we're able to give insights during the process that says, we're really seeing that for this particular role, freedom, for example, is one of the areas that, candidates are particularly interested in. And then also during the process, we're able to back up that diversity data and say, of the long list that we've spoke to, 30% of that long list are diverse as an example. I think then the end point would be after the process. So, once the process is included, we can almost look at metrics relating to the process, but also just metrics kind of relating to, the organization. So for example, things like brand engagement. So, of that long list, how many candidates knew of the particular brand, were engaged by the particular brand, where it felt good about the particular, organization. We can also then look at the kind of traditional metrics, like how long did it take us to fill the role, time to shortlist, time to offer. We do, formal quality of hire check-ins, 1, 3, 6, and 12 months. How is the candidate or employee at that point matching against what they would do? So I think, we're building this data for two reasons. One, to give insights to our customers about the particular role that we're working on, but two, to leave them with some insights that allows them to kind of think wider and say, okay, that's really interesting. We've got an issue around brand engagement. Only 30% of the candidates that Solutions Driven contacted actually knew, about our organisation, as an example.
And now I know you wanted to show some examples, which we'll come to in a minute. Does that kind of data change based on the type of role, for example? So if it's a CEO versus, I don't know, a head of sales or something like that, do we still go through the same process, or is the data still the same? Or
we do. I mean, I think
different things. Is it quite flexible?
Yeah, it's flexible. I mean, I think that there are particular areas that more senior searches will focus more on, than let's say mid searches. But I guess how we collect that data is the same process, but we can bespoke that to the customer needs. So if the customer says, I'm looking for this particular role, someone has to have had 5 years experience with their current role. I don't want a job hopper. I want credibility, etc., etc. That's something that we can build in, to the front end of the scoping and the insights.
Great. So is it worthwhile you showing? I know you were.
Of course, no issue at all.
For those listening in, clearly you just need to try and grab a copy of the video. We'll put that on the website, but we're going to be looking at just some data on a spreadsheet just to show the types of intelligence we were talking about there.
So take this as an example. So, what we've done here is just a complete example. A VP of sales based in the US, has to have experience of working in SaaS and has to come from a pharma or life science background from a sector experience point of view. So what you can see here is just how we cut and slice data. So we can see that there are circa 160 candidates that match that particular requirement. And we can then look at where those candidates are based across the US and really then understand what are the kind of hotspots of where we should be, targeting that talent. We can then look and understand, where are those candidates coming from in terms of, current organizations. What are they called? Because if it's a VP of sales, they could be called a variety of different things. And again, it shows you some examples there. And all this is doing is helping our team really make sure that we are addressing, the total available market. We're looking at past companies. So is there any links to, where they've worked before and understanding some I guess connections there, past titles. We can look at years of experience and roles. So we can see, that the majority of this talent pool are fairly experienced, having had, more than 10 years, which you would expect, at the level of a VP. We can then look at tenure in role. So we can see that quite a big part of this talent pool have actually recently moved. So again, what will make them more likely to move just now, what's the kind of candidate value proposition that's going to attract people that are already, only in the current role 2 years. We can look at things like education background, so we can see, what percentage of that talent pool have, degrees, MBAs, etc. What did they major in? So what are the kind of functional subjects that this talent pool are most experienced in? We can look at diversity and say, 19% of the pool are female, 1% African American, etc. And again, why do we do this? Because it allows the client up front to say, okay, so if we really want to make sure this is a diverse shortlist, we actually are comfortable with people with less than X amount of years in current role, etc. And then we can start looking at industry. So what industries will typically these people come from? And as you would expect, given that this particular one is SaaS and pharma, obviously the top ones there are SaaS, healthcare, pharmaceutical, etc. And then lastly, we can look at size of company. So we can see that quite a big percentage of this talent pool are in smaller organizations, maybe fast growth startups, highly growing, organizations. Again, the question is, what will entice them out, of an organization that may be growing, fairly quickly. Then we can look at things like, what groups are people on social in this talent pool typically involved in, because that gives our team an understanding to say, okay, here's the areas we need to really get further understanding in. So that's really just an example, Rob, of some of the data that we're using ahead of a recruitment process starting. And really this data then gives our clients confidence that A, we can understand how we map out a market, but B, it's about giving them insights. It's about having those discussions around, you'll see here quite a big part of the talent pool have recently moved, in the role for less than 2 years. Is that an issue? Because we've got some clients that say we want someone who's, shown progress and has been steady and has been in the same, role for 5 years, whereas we can demonstrate there that quite a big part of that talent pool haven't, as an example. So it's really about opening up that discussion, which allows us to scope the role correctly.
So that gets used just for reference at the beginning of, just I suppose the kind of...
That purely gets used, and it's very new. I mean, we've literally just started embedding this into our process over the last few weeks. We used to do this more kind of indirectly through the process and as part of what we've done or what we do. But I think now we're bringing this kind of front and center to the start of the process to allow, our team and the hiring team to really just get a better understanding of, what is the candidate availability out there.
And what's the feedback been like so far? I'm assuming, I mean, it's the first time I've seen it, so it looks great.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, I think a few clients have said, we're impressed with the level of detail that you go into. We're impressed with, how serious you take this mapping out, talent. And for us, it's about, because I think too many recruiters can sometimes say things like, this is a tough space, there's not many candidates available for this role. And for us, going back to the word intelligence, we're trying to provide that intelligence behind it, that we can back things up by data. And also more and more of our clients are now expecting this kind of thing. I mean, I think the majority of our clients are, multinational organizations, use data every day. Therefore, when they're partnering with external organizations, almost have an expectation of, how this kind of thing should work.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually leads me on nicely to my next question, because I was looking at, there was an article by a gentleman, I'm just reading his name here, Bernard Marr, and he was talking about, he was coming at it from I suppose we would call them clients or a company's perspective. Clearly that data's for companies we are working with, but he was talking about the metrics should come from, I suppose, the company's goals, whatever their goals are. So for example, if their company goal, as you just said, was to increase its talent pool in terms of its diversity, or maybe just reduce costs, for example, I can imagine that kind of level of data, even one of the slides you showed me there about how the candidate pool in terms of it's Hispanic or was it Black American there, etc. That kind of stuff must be, as you said, is that almost becoming the norm or should be the norm?
I think it should be the norm. I mean, I don't think it's yet becoming the norm. I think it should be the norm. I think one of our challenges that we're trying to educate clients with is some clients have, the kind of buzzwords in mind, diversity, etc. And sometimes it's talked about too late in the process. So what we're trying to do, because by that point, the long list, the engaged list, the short list have been screened. What we're trying to do up front is say, what is important to you? So almost to your point, start with the end goal in mind. So if the organization wants to increase employer brand or brand awareness, if the organization wants to increase the diversity of their talent pool, what can we as an external partner talk about up front to really understand what we then need to do, to build that into our process? And I think that's the best way it works. I think, when it's talked kind of at the end retrospectively, it's more difficult to impact. Hence why we're trying to, bring intelligence to the start of the process.
And what kind of insights, for example, I'm just trying to think ahead, post hire. So, for example, once the hiring's finished, I know as you said we do kind of check-in calls. What kind of things do we look at that kind of stage then?
So I think, there's almost two levels of it. I think as you know, I obviously focused quite heavily a few years ago on quality of hire, and looked at, how do we build a platform that starts to measure that? I think two things. You can only really measure quality of hire if you're measuring it against something. I think it's too subjective to say Gavin isn't a good fit 6 months later. It's almost why and where are the gaps. So what we're doing is really, formal reviews with clients 1, 3, 6, and 12 months to say, how is the employee that has now joined performing, but we're also taking information from that and building that into future, hires. So for example, if an organization says, yeah, they're doing well, but we really need more kind of strategic commercial thinking in this function, we're then taking that and saying, okay, the next time we recruit, we will remember that and we will then build that into the front end scoping that we talk about. So it's almost allowing the client to not have to keep saying that to us, because we're then taking that, data. And I think then, we're, from an ongoing quality of hire, there's obviously, there's the kind of objective and subjective. So we're looking at, NPS scores, how satisfied are our customers with our process, but also, how long do our talent stay? And we track some metrics just around, the three things: the diversity of candidates that we've placed, the tenure of candidates that we've placed, and also how many, as a percentage, get promoted in the first couple of years, when they join that organisation.
And do we look at things like, or do we? I'm sure we do, but like source of hire, for example, like I don't know, what do you look at that post hire, for example? Did they come from LinkedIn or other sources, and quality? Do we look at those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my I'll get on my soapbox here, but I think too many people just look at source of hire and don't actually look at the quality of the source. So I think the key is matching that up. So for example, you could have an organization that say, our best source is LinkedIn because we hired 100 people in LinkedIn. But what they don't say is, and of those 100 people, X were leavers, X were bad, hires, etc. So for us, it's about not only measuring the source, which we do, but it's also measuring the quality of that source, linking to, how many of those hires stay, how many of those hires are promoted in the organisation.
Right. So last one, a bit of a left field one slightly, but again, one of the articles I was reading, just doing some research for this interview, was, I suppose, around AI. And AI seems to crop up in every single conversation, but it was almost about, I'm just reading it here, how AI as a tool can boost recruitment effectiveness. And it was talking about how AI is getting better at understanding humans, whether it's personality traits, likes, maybe some of the data you shared with us, maybe AI over time, or probably already does, interrogates that data maybe at a deeper level. But do you think that limits? So again, go back to my market analogy, where it's almost that kind of funnel approach, where it's getting leads in at the bottom, but getting people aware of the brand and so on and so forth. But do you think AI will help in terms of, I suppose, recruitment effectiveness, full stop, but also all these kind of metrics and insights that we're providing? Will it do a lot of the legwork for us in terms of providing insights?
So I think, my view is, and we talked about it a couple of weeks ago in the last one, there's a blend of art and science in recruitment. And, for me, the science is around, how do we automate sourcing? How do we get AI, used in the process? And how do we learn from what we're doing? And then the kind of art piece is, how do we engage candidates? How do we provide insightful information to the customer at the point of time? So I think there's still quite a big role for the recruiter, which is knowing your customer and knowing what data is important to your customer at the point in time. Yeah, you may pull that data from an AI source or whatever, but I think the human still has to think what's important to the customer. I think going to AI, there's probably three obvious benefits. So there's clearly the time, the quality, and the cost. I think if you look at it, time, we're using tools now that have AI built into them. That's allowing our recruiters to front end save time on that sourcing, that insights, that mapping out the market. We're also, we've got options now that allows us to do almost blind sourcing. So to remove bias, you can say, rather than looking at a talent pool and being biased, we can now look at a talent pool that is blind, that allows us to, prevent any bias as an example. I think then from a quality, I think where the AI impacts is the learning element of it. So there's clear, even in the tools that we use, AI isn't perfect, so it needs fed, it needs to learn, it needs to improve, but it definitely will. And then obviously over time, there should be a cost saving, so, rather than continuing to hire lots of recruiters, we are looking at what parts of the process can we automate, and ultimately be more efficient. So I think definitely, anyone that says AI doesn't exist in recruitment is, for me, not thinking correctly. But I think there's a blend of the science and the art.
No, 100%. And the presentation was very good. As I say, I've not seen that before, so that was good. That was good as well. So appreciate that. Look, I'll let you go. So we'll catch up very soon.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time.
Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.